Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet. Today I've been reflecting on what it means to actually produce a podcast. I reflect periodically, certainly in recent months, that I don't know whether I get the full publicity that I could for these podcasts, but I don't really record these podcasts with the hope that they will be publicized and get out to a broad audience. I think the nature of Short Funk has defined itself as something which is not necessarily intimate, but at least something which is put out there that a certain group of listeners will thoroughly enjoy, and maybe another group of listeners are not so interested in. And for this reason, I actually feel very strongly that this format should maintain itself and not become, some publicity engine in and of itself. But I have been reflecting on the benefit of the press release and these kind of things, certain modes to promote these podcast recordings, because I do put a certain effort into them, and at the same time, they remain, well, to a certain extent by word of mouth or people just discovering them, but they remain relatively insular in terms of the broader reach. And I often wonder if there were little things that I could do to change that reach in some way. I don't think there are topics that I would necessarily pick or choose from, but I do reflect quite heavily that Short Funk as a thing has lamented in a particular area. It's not grown rapidly, it's not been model rail radio, but I guess I need to be thankful for the folks who are reached by Short Funk. The addition of Twitter and these kind of components haven't really promoted the podcast to an extent that I thought it might be promoted. And what strikes me through Twitter is actually it's more noise, just more endless noise. And for folks who have particular interests, using hashtags and things to try and get their interest, I'll get a like, but I'll rarely get a follower. I'll rarely get someone who's interested actually in continuing to listen to the format. And this poses a number of problems. I've talked to my wife recently associated with the role of publicist associated with my various podcasts, taking just a little bit of time to put together press releases, which I can then work on, or just other means of publicity, maybe inviting people to participate in my other podcasts, or just some way of generating additional listeners through quid pro quo. What I found historically, particularly through the Psychedelic Salon, is this never really works meaningfully. In fact, what you find is that you're just dealing with another small pond of, podcast listeners that are getting maybe disenchanted with their podcast formats or things like that. It's very interesting to listen to podcasts periodically that have pre-roll ads, but I'm much impressed by the phenomena of people who are starting to enjoy podcasting just as a means of reaching people. And I think that's certainly been my primary interest when I record these podcasts, is just trying to reach people in a very direct, very unassuming way. And in this light, what will publicity bring? A few additional listeners, but in terms of the core listeners, the folks that listen to Short Funk on a regular basis, I don't think it's going to change that group particularly. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.